For the sake of the story, I'm going to call myself Brad. This happened around Christmas of last year. I'm a 25-year-old man, and I live in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. But I have many family members who live in Miami, Florida. So every Christmas, I usually take a trip down to Miami to spend some time with my family over the holidays. Last year, I stayed at my cousin's house. I'll refer to them as Jack, Jason, and Adrian. When I got there, we hung out with my aunts and uncles and generally had a good time catching up and whatnot. I'm going to provide some pretext before I get into what happened. My cousins and I are big horror fans, and we enjoy watching and listening to horror stories on YouTube, from channels like Unit 522, Mr. Nightmare, and Southern Cannibal. We also sometimes liked going on night drives while listening to the stories. It was the night of December 27th, and my cousins and I decided to go out at around 2:30 a.m. But Adrian had a bright idea.
Hey guys, instead of taking the car, how about we go out on foot tonight?
Dude, really? You're crazy. We're in Florida. We're gonna get eaten alive by mosquitoes. Unfortunately, Jack and Jason agreed with Adrian.
Come on, man, don't be such a punk. I need to save money on gas anyways.
I gave in to the peer pressure and went along with the plan, although something told me that this was a very bad idea. After about an hour of walking, we decided to head into this poorly lit neighborhood just off the main road. I thought this was a stupid idea, and I vocalized my concerns. I don't think this is such a good idea, guys. Adrian, being the big tough guy he is, responded with,
What's with you tonight, Brad?
He then flexed his bicep.
You see this? If anyone messes with us, I'll put him through a windshield. Now stop being such a crybaby and come on. Everything will be fine.
So, with that, we walked into the neighborhood. About half of the streetlights were out, and the ones that still worked were flickering or were on the verge of blowing out. After a while, we saw a bench and decided to sit down and take a short break. About 30 minutes later, we heard gunshots in the distance. They sounded like they could be automatic weapons. We all stood up and looked toward the neighborhood entrance. An SUV came speeding into the neighborhood.
What the hell?
Adrian shouted. I told you this was a bad idea. We need to get the hell out of here. But before we could flee, the SUV was already upon us. It looked like a black, late-model Dodge Durango. We all backed away as a man wearing a ski mask got out of the passenger seat and pointed a pistol at us.
If any of you move, I'm gonna blow your fucking brains out all over the street. Now hand over your wallets. Now!
My cousins were all frozen, but I quickly took my wallet out and gave the masked man the $50 I had on me. My cousins then handed over what they had as well, all while being screamed at and having a gun pointed at their faces. When he had all the money, he then said something that made my heart stop.
All of you are taking a little ride with us tonight. Now get in the fucking car.
My cousins and I all looked at each other, not saying anything. We all knew that we were going to die that night. But by pure luck, the driver said, Hey, we're not taking anyone tonight. Let's go.
Well, boys, it's your lucky night, I guess.
He ran to the SUV, and they sped away into the darkness. And just like that, it was all over. We were all pretty shaken up about what just happened. When you go walking around Miami at night, you know that you're taking a risk, but that still does a little to mitigate the trauma. After collecting ourselves, we decided to get the hell out of there. We didn't bother calling the police, because we couldn't give a physical description, and the Durango didn't have any visible license plate I would have remembered. So there wouldn't be much that they could have done. We also didn't tell our family because Well, they would have felt bad for us. They would have given a shit about being stupid enough to go out on foot at 2 a.m. They would have been right. But still, well, we didn't want to hear it. We still go out at night sometimes whenever we get together, but we always take the car now. Adrian realized that he was not as tough as he liked to believe himself to be. My advice to anyone listening: you may think you're a big tough guy, but it doesn't matter how big your biceps are. When a maniac points a gun at you, shit can go south real quick. Every town has a story about something horrible that has happened in its past. I like to share the story of what happened in my hometown years ago. I'm sure those of you who live in the big cities are somewhat used to hearing about stories like this happening on a weekly basis, which is sad. But out here, in the less populated areas, stories like this almost become an urban legend. I actually witnessed a small part of what took place that night, so that's where I'll begin. I was chilling on my couch one night, watching TV with a bowl of popcorn by my side. I was kind of dozing off when I heard a loud bang at my back door. Not like a gunshot, it was more like something being knocked over. I got up and checked things out, but I saw nothing. I figured that the neighborhood cats were fighting again, and something got knocked over in the process. That's happened before. So I sat back down to finish what I was watching before calling it a night. I then heard some commotion in my backyard. I quickly got up and looked out my back window to see a young girl running through my backyard. She looked scared for her life. There was a man wearing a mask who was chasing after her, yelling for her to stop. It was like something straight out of a horror movie. After they disappeared from view, I immediately called the police. Now, I wasn't in any direct danger, but what I witnessed was only a very small part of what took place that night. The rest of this story is pieced together from news articles and reports. The man in the mask was a manic depressive who refused to take his medication. He left his apartment that night and proceeded to have a complete nuclear meltdown. He absolutely lost his mind. The woman I saw in my backyard was stabbed over 17 times and was found dead a block down the road from my house. A short time after that, he terrorized a bunch of people at a bus stop. Eyewitness report stated that he was laughing like a lunatic and engaged in self-harm. After leaving the bus stop, he was able to flag down a taxi, which drove him back to his apartment. But instead of paying the driver, he murdered him. When his neighbors saw him stumbling into his apartment, covered in blood, holding a knife, they immediately called the cops. I'm assuming by this point that the police had already heard about what happened at the bus stop and the poor girl that was found stabbed to death. And when they discovered the dead taxi driver outside his apartment building, they connected the dots and knew that they had found the man responsible for this murderous rampage. His apartment was surrounded and a standoff ensued. Unfortunately, nothing they did seemed to calm him down, and he ended up taking his own life that night. He left behind 2 children, a pregnant wife, and his elderly mother, who had cancer. The psychiatrist he was seeing was accused of malpractice for not prescribing him the correct medication. It was a mess, but I don't think any charges were filed against him. That night still haunts the people of this town, and you can still feel a sense of unease whenever the sun goes down around here.
This experience happened during the winter of 2019. I was 24 back then, and this was the year that I finally moved out of my parents' house after working hard and saving up my money. I was able to find a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house about 20 minutes away from where my parents lived to rent out. I was elated to finally have a place of my own. When I got back home from work, it was just me, myself, and I. And on weekends, I could sleep in and get out of bed whenever I wanted to. I could relax and not worry about being interrupted by my parents calling my name from time to time, asking me to do chores or give me shit about something I did wrong or something I didn't do. Finally, I had what some might call freedom. On the night of February 13th, I was in my room watching YouTube videos on my phone, and suddenly I heard a loud knock on my front door. In general, I always got slightly nervous whenever a stranger would knock at the door, but it was around 11 p.m. that night, and the fact that someone was knocking at this hour was even more nerve-wracking. But I figured if I ignored them, they would take the hint and leave. I went back to watching YouTube videos. 5 minutes later, the knocking came again. I decided to look out of my bedroom window, and I saw a large man wearing a black trench coat just standing there. My blood turned to ice as his appearance reminded me of Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. Yeah, no way in hell I'm opening the door for that guy. As I waited for him to go away, I heard the man try to open the door. I was now in full panic mode. The door was locked, but this guy wasn't giving up. He began to kick the door over and over again, and instead of calling the cops, like I should have, I got my pistol from the nightstand and I loaded it. I made my way to the hallway where the front door was located. The man's arm came smashing through the small window on the door and reached down to grab the lock. I fired a shot at him, hitting him in the forearm. He didn't even flinch. He didn't grunt. He didn't make a single sound. What the? After a momentary pause, he proceeded to unlock the door, and then he made his way inside. I retreated up the stairs to my bedroom, taking aim at the doorway. I heard the man stomping up the stairs, making his way right to where I was. After kicking in my door, I came face to face with the trenchcoat man. I saw him reaching into his pocket, and I did not hesitate. I emptied the magazine, landing multiple shots in the chest and stomach, and the man fell to the floor. I quickly stepped over his body as I made my way outside. However, I did look back one last time before descending the stairs to see the man somehow getting back up. I called the police and I waited for them down the street from my house. By the time they showed up and searched my house, the trenchcoat man was gone, leaving a smashed up front door and a pool full of blood outside my bedroom. The officers took my statement, but nothing ever came of it. After the incident, my landlord installed another door that had no windows on it and was much more solid, and he also installed security alarms and cameras and even lowered my monthly rent to try to convince me to stay. This was an isolated incident, and the area is generally safe to live in, so I decided to stay. I still live alone to this day and I still enjoy it, but I now get a little more paranoid at night. Whenever I sleep, I lock my bedroom door to provide myself extra security and peace of mind. I just hope that the trenchcoat man never returns.
A special thanks to Darek Weber for helping me out in this video. You can check out his channel by clicking the link in the description. Hey everyone, this is your Uncle Unit. Thank you so much for checking out my video. If you have a story that you would like me to narrate on this channel, please send it to my email, unit522submit@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you would like to support this channel even further, you can check out my merch store. There's a link for that in the description. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you stay tuned for the next video. Until then, never forget